Hello, this is Kevin Polky from The Journey. And as we have talked many times, this particular uh, podcast today will be another reflection on the journey. As many of you have listened to over the last 2.5 years or so, we've had numerous different conversations about individuals who have shared their story of transformation and how they have learned through setbacks or through obstacles that have appeared in their life, what they have learned from that and how they have transformed their lives because of those obstacles. And then other times we will do these reflections on the journey. In other words, something that I may be pondering on or be thinking about, or something that I've most recently have come across. And that is, in this particular case, it is a poem that some of you may have heard before, or at least heard parts of this poem before. It is a poem by Robert Frost. And it is the poem's called "The Road Not Taken." And let me read it to you, and then I'll give you some reflections that I came across as I was reflecting on it, as well as sharing it with my staff, as well as some other groups of professionals that I was consulting with. "The Road Not Taken" by Robert Frost. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth, then took the other, just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there had warned them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with such I, w- I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverge in a wood, and I took the one last traveled by, and that has made all the difference. I think of this poem and I think of how would this apply in my life? How has it applied in my life? And this idea of um, one of a couple thoughts. One is this idea of um, making the right decision of which path should I go in. Should I go right or should I go left? And this idea of not wanting to make a mistake in that process, and recognizing today that for me, making that choice to go either right or left, maybe in itself um, is not really that much of the problem. I know for me that has paralyzed me in the past, where I would just contemplate and continue to look over and over which one should be the best one, which is the best route for me to go. And I think now, with doing a certain level of due diligence and assessing and scanning what which path that I should choose, then recognizing that as I choose that path, that happens to be the path that I'm on, and then that needs to just be seen all the way through. Because I don't know if there is such as a wrong path. That either path will still end up or still provide an opportunity for me to explore, to grow, to develop, to experience things that I may not have experienced. But I think in this particular poem, it is, why do I choose to go right or left? I think in my past, I have made choices to choose a path that is familiar or in my comfort zone, because I may be able to somehow ensure or more likely know what the outcome would be. And I think that when I have done that, Um, I have had some regrets because I think I settled. I chose that maybe that path out of fear or concern that something may not work out. Or maybe I thought that I didn't have what it would take to see that particular path all the way through. And I think in those cases, then that I need to maybe dig down for me from a spiritual standpoint. This is where I need to go. Is this because I'm afraid that I don't have what it takes or afraid of going down this unfamiliar path that I need to rely more on an interdependent relationship on God to navigate that path? Now, if I think about a path that I have been down before, and I know what that outcome could be. I've talked a few weeks ago about eating certain foods or overeating certain foods, and knowing that if I do certain things, that I can ensure um, uh, discomfort and pain later on, or maybe we would say the next day. That path, I know for myself that uh, that I don't need to go down that path. But as far as a path of curiosity, a path of exploring or potential development, and that I would shy away from that because it's not familiar, um, that maybe today is the path that I need to go on. I know that having left the school system to go into clinical work full time, um, leaving the path of predictable, um, a predictable salary, predictable hours, a familiar, a familiar environment, familiar expectation. I think that I think that then was a way that I would then be able to control some of that risk. But leaving the schools and going into that first clinical setting, I know that that made a huge difference, and that fear subsided over time as I became the new normal. And similar, when I left that clinical site and opened up KP, again, uncertainty with financial risk, and that in itself was a concern. But if I would have settled and stayed, um, I would have never experienced what I've experienced by opening up KP, or similar to Shatter Our Silence. So in many of those areas where the road diverges and there is an aspect of adventure or exploring, um, and you it, by going that path that has not been traveled by you, uh, is to engage you and stretch you. I would encourage to think about that. Again, the idea is if you are at that crossroads, first it's to assess what may be holding you back from taking the road that's less traveled and less familiar. And then as you go down that road, um, know that this is part of the adventure, that it is okay. Now, if you choose the path that has been traveled before and you're familiar with, that's okay too. Don't go down the path and have regret. You've already decided. So allow it to be, knowing that the next time that maybe when that opportunity comes, you may take the path that's less traveled. Because I know for me, when I have done that, that has definitely made all the difference. Again, thank you for being with me today. And as always, if you think that someone may benefit from hearing this, um, please pass it on. And I will talk to you soon. See you next week.